Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Gentleman. Today I have Hollywood 6 from the Trash Talkers. How you doing?
Good, JJ. I appreciate you having me on again, dude. Love being here, loving the conversation, man. It's always fun spending some time with you, buddy. How about you, man? How you been?
I've been fine as well. And today we're going to be talking about conspiracy theories, folklore, urban legends, creepypasta, and basically everything related to it. I know we'll probably go off topic at some point, but that is the fun of the show.
And that's the Trash Talk Podcast, dude. That's what it's based on.
And I guess the first question that we want to start with is, how do conspiracy theories even come about? I guess that would be a good starting point. Any pointers?
Okay, well, let's think about this for a second. Now, when we say, how do conspiracy theories come about? I think you kind of have to take into, I think you have to take in the thought that of what kind of conspiracy. It could be like, hey, Bigfoot, that's a conspiracy, which I'd say 90% of people don't believe in. However, JFK assassination, that was a conspiracy, which a lot of people do believe. So I think there's it depends on the magnitude of the conspiracy theory. So let's take one like Bigfoot. Let's say, hey, I saw Bigfoot out, and there's no concrete evidence. Of course, there's that one video where the guy's walking in the suit, and I want to say that's actually been debunked. But when you have a conspiracy like that, which is usually isolated to one certain part of the United States, the northwest, like in California or North California, Seattle, where all the woods are basically. So when you have a conspiracy like that, it becomes more of I think something that small becomes a local thing, and then it becomes a bigger thing as far as like, hey, it spreads by word of mouth basically. So it could start in your city, and then people in your city are talking to the state under, and then the state under is talking to this guy who happens to live in Alabama, drives over to Alabama. Now that conspiracy started as a local conspiracy, but now becomes nationwide. Now, when you take one like the JFK assassination, which is already nationwide, JFK being the president of the United States, that instantly, that broadens the people's attention span or the people's attention of the conspiracy, because it's actually the president of the United States versus a 6 foot tall 8-man walking around the world. So if I were to say how a conspiracy theory comes to about, I'm just going to say, I'll say it's a 50-50 type thing, to where 50% of word of mouth and 50% is just like coincidence. Like there's too much of a coincidence for this to not be a conspiracy.
So what I'm hearing is that Bigfoot shot JFK. That's my takeaway from this.
The hell did you?
I'm sorry. I just the two examples, like it came to mind. No, but obviously the idea is sometimes I guess like as you said, like in the sort of more urban legend creature kind of thing, it's oftentimes someone sees something that either they can't explain or like they think looks like something else maybe, and then that kind of spreads by word of mouth and then slowly creeps outwards, while other sort of more politically oriented things are oftentimes you have a situation like the JFK shooting where some of the facts maybe don't seem to line up with what you've been told, and it's a big news story to begin with, and so people start speculating, and then that speculation inevitably, goes in all sorts of directions, but then a lot of the directions kind of die off because either they're too far-fetched or there's just not anyone that really thinks that it's plausible except for the person who originally came up with it. And some other ones, maybe even if people come up with them independently especially, but generally some other ones that will become sort of inevitably more popular, and then I think it kind of sort of sorts out which conspiracies come to the top, like the second shooter in the JFK assassination, for example. And obviously there's a theory that there's a second shooter, but there's also the question of if the first shooter is even the guy that they got, but that's the whole other thing.
I don't know how familiar you are with that, but Lee Harvey Oswald, who's the guy that they depended on, he actually made a statement, and he said, hey, I'm actually just a patsy in this scheme. He actually said that.
And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he also assassinated shortly after being caught or something? So
that's correct.
That obviously kind of inherently invites conspiracy. And there's kind of a point where, at some point, it's kind of natural, I think, to come up with alternate explanations when the explanations that you've been given seem so far-fetched. And I mean, obviously, doesn't necessarily mean that because the explanations seem far-fetched doesn't necessarily have to mean they're untrue, but it definitely leads you to believe that. And it's kind of like that one time that a guy shot himself in the head 3 times and then put himself into a suitcase, and people were like, I don't think it was actually suicide. And it's like, yeah, no shit, right?
Was this an actual story?
So I only half remember this happened like a couple of years back, but and it also happened in a different country, but there was some guy who was found in a suitcase with, I think, multiple gunshot wounds in the head, and the sort of official story from that country was that it was suicide. And it's obviously, you cannot shoot yourself in the head multiple times, and much less then afterwards, wrap yourself up in a suitcase. Right? It's that just...
Okay.
Or,
yes.
Carry on.
I get where you're going as far as the you can't do this. I actually know a guy personally that tried to take his own life and shot himself, and literally half of his face is missing, and tried it again and succeeded.
I mean, obviously, yes, you can technically shoot yourself in the head multiple times. It depends on what you hit exactly, but obviously, the whole thing, also, if you were killing yourself, why would you then, put yourself in a bag, right? It's no, this is just obviously not the real circumstance of what happened there.
Yeah.
And, there are other things, right? Like the Jeffrey Epstein, where it's Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. It's a very popular thing around the world because, the cameras randomly were turned off at the time, no guards were around, and all of a sudden the guy kills himself. It's there are a lot of people that want to see him dead, and simultaneously, there somehow is no evidence of his suicide, despite the fact that he was under observation, and it's something fishy seems to be going on there. Right? That kind of natural conclusion.
Yes, I get it. So let me ask you this. Are we okay to speak about the Jeffrey Epstein thing? Or
I talked about it just now, so it's not like I'm shying away from it.
Okay, so let's go down that road. You're right, dude. Well, first of all, I'm speaking to you not only as a friend, but I'm speaking to you as someone who, and to everyone watching this right now, JJ doesn't believe in it. It's to my knowledge. Is there any conspiracy that you actually think is the real story? Is there any conspiracy you do believe in?
I mean, I'm not sure if there is any conspiracy theory that I specifically believe. There are some that I find very plausible, right? But most of those are also more vague. Is there more to the JFK assassination, right? Is there more to the Jeffrey Epstein thing? Is there more to 9/11, right? Those sort of questions where it's there seems to be a lot of factors going to this that aren't necessarily fully explained. I haven't looked into any of them deeply enough to be certainly convinced of one particular version of the story, but those are definitely the ones where I would certainly at the very least have some doubt of the sort of official story. Kind of also maybe a more topical one is the coronavirus lab leak theory, right? Where the idea is that it's kind of suspicious that there is a novel coronavirus research lab in Wuhan, right where the coronavirus outbreak started at first. So it almost seems like there might be a connection there, right? And it's I can't definitively say that's the case, but it almost sounds more plausible than someone eating a bat. I mean, I know Ozzy did it once, but that doesn't mean that it's a common thing.
Was that actually confirmed? Was it confirmed that it actually came from someone eating a bat?
I believe that was also more just a rumor. I think the official explanation is that there was an animal to human transmission. I think the bat eating part might have been a slight exaggeration on when the story spread, but either way, the official story, as far as I know, is that it spread from animals to humans, which isn't entirely uncommon. It does happen with viruses, but you do have to wonder about the presence of the lab right in the area where the outbreak was. And some people say the Chinese intentionally released it to cripple the Americans or whatever. It's no, this is bullshit, right? Why would you intentionally release a virus in your own country, right, to then have it spread abroad? That's kind of stupid. But negligence, right? What is it? There's a common philosophical razor. I forget the name of the guy who came up with it, but that says, do not attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by incompetence. Which is to say, but that's also kind of to go against conspiracy theories, where it's often very difficult to plan something to go a very specific way, but for stuff to just go wrong happens all the time, right? So the idea that oh, the coronavirus lab intentionally leaked a virus to see what would happen is a little out there, especially, again, since it's in your own country. Whereas saying that maybe, like, someone didn't fully follow the containment procedures and they had something on their clothing, and they had, like, a torn suit or something, they got affected in the lab, they walked out and started affecting other people, is much more plausible. Then again, I do not know why that lab is right there, so there's a possibility. And then again, I haven't looked into that much, but that maybe there were already some coronaviruses in that area that they were doing research on, which is why the lab was there, and then that could be sort of a third factor of why both those things could happen in the same area. So that's also the thing you always have to look at, right? Just because if a conspiracy theory seems to fit, doesn't necessarily... Just because a set of facts seems to fit the narrative, or the narrative seems to fit a set of facts, doesn't mean that there couldn't also be another narrative that could fit equally or equally well or even better. And so you kind of have to consider all possibilities as well.
Okay, so going back to the Epstein thing is, like you said, this guy. First of all, the cause of death, it was suicide, right?
Yes, I believe I believe the official story is he hanged himself, and I do believe
he hung himself.
I mean, it is very likely that he did die by asphyxiation from hanging, right? Like that. I'm not saying that didn't happen.
There are a few ways around that, though, JJ. Yes, that is the cause of death, but what caused that?
It's not that. There have been other cases where, like, someone was hung in a prison cell by someone else, right? Like that isn't that far-fetched, right? So the idea that he was hanged, whether by his own hand or by someone else's, I don't think it's that far-fetched. And we don't have to, like, start questioning things that don't really matter that much, right? Because at the end of the day, whether he killed himself or whether he was killed is irrelevant if he died by hanging. Whereas, of course, if it turns out that he didn't die by hanging, that certainly shifts very heavily towards he actually didn't kill himself and there's a cover-up. But the fact that there was a hanging does not mean that it was a suicide.
Well, where I'm going here is, again, this topic is, how does a conspiracy come to be? Now, Jeffrey Epstein was a very powerful man. Jeffrey Epstein hung out with lots of big political people. He hung out with a lot of celebrities. The guy had an island called Fuck Island. Literally, it was called Fuck Island.
I'm assuming that was not the official name, but yeah.
Oh, no. I'm pretty sure it was Fuck Island. I could be wrong, but I think it was something on that narrative. But he would take famous people to this place where, there's no jurisdiction and you can, do whatever you want with these, how can I say this? And you can do things with certain people that should not be done with laws. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think we all know the circumstances about the situation.
But so now and again, we're talking about how conspiracies come up. For this guy to be as rich and powerful as he was, someone gifted him a house, which is, I think the house was in the Israel flag colors, like yellow and blue. It looked like like an Egyptian tomb. And the videos that they showed or the pictures that they showed walking into this guy's house was a picture of Bill Clinton in a dress, like blowing a kiss at him. And there's, I want to say, I'll say allegedly, but allegedly Bill Clinton flew with him to this island 26 times. 26 times, I think that's roughly around the amount of time that he flew to that island. The question is okay, you're hanging out with a previous president. You have an island that really has no law or jurisdiction. You're bringing many famous people over, and you're flying in young women, and you're doing all these things, and you just so happen to get arrested. Now, we don't know who else this guy went to this island with. Could have been, many other presidents. Could have been very prominent people in the world. And now you're arrested, and you're in jail, and you know what I did on January 13th of 2017 with this person and that person. So if you're locked up and they're saying, hey, you give us this information, we'll possibly lighten your sentence. And just so happens, when they put you in the cell, all the cameras go out. There's no security guards. You've got access to things to, take your own life. And if I'm not mistaken, he actually had a guy in the cell who was like 6'8", 280 pounds. I mean, when you look at something like that, it raises the question, how do you do it? And in this case, I feel like how did it come to be? Is you're taking someone so prominent who hung out with prominent people who died in a very eerie, mysterious way. It's like, how? I mean, how does that even come to be? And have you seen the thing where he actually had a cell guard? And actually, before you answer that, I read somewhere, and I think I actually heard this as well, that the strangulation from a hang would go up, but his was going towards like back. It almost looks like he was strangled by someone. Have you heard that one?
So I'm as I said, I'm not that familiar with the specifics of the case, but again, like, you only really have to see the facts, right? Like, he was very well connected, which is a good thing if you're trying to not get in jail in the first place. But once you're caught, like, there are a lot of people that don't want to be connected back to him. Well, or at least they don't want to be implicated into anything specific. I mean, there are lots of pictures of people shaking his hand that, but
bro, he flew with Bill Clinton 26 times. I had spoken to you 26 times, dude. Imagine that. You flew with Bill Clinton to F Island. I haven't flown with my mother 26 times. It seems a little weird.
The point is, right, people that had enough money to bribe a prison guard into killing someone were interested in having him die, right? And so it's very easy to suspect that something to that effect happened, right? It's not one of those things where you have to implicate like hundreds of people working in an entire government agency that somehow work together. Like, some of those, that's why I tend to not believe in a lot of those bigger conspiracy theories. Although, of course, whenever you start asking questions about 9/11, you also have to ask how many people would have had to have known. But there's certain things like Flat Earth, where it's like, oh, right, so the entirety of NASA, every single private spaceflight company, right, and every other space agency, like ESA and whatnot, would all have to keep this hidden, right? There's like thousands of people right now, plus historically even more, and that isn't really plausible on that scale. But one person paying off like one or two prison guards, likely through a middleman,
especially from previous presidents.
But likely through a middleman, right? So you have one middleman, very likely because you wouldn't personally pay someone off, and then you have like, I think, two prison guards maybe, and then the person that hired it, and so there's like four people in the world that would actually know what happened. And keeping four people quiet, especially when it's one of them is the perpetrator, right? They would never speak. And the other three all have financial incentives not to do it, and also legal liability incentives. So it's like, yeah, no, there's like, everyone in that situation is incentivized not to speak about it, so that even, like, someone would have to A, decide that they want to come clean, and B, then be willing to live with the consequences, and C, know that the last person who was a danger to that whole situation also got killed. So, like, there aren't really many options for a leak, and even those would be fairly unlikely.
Well, have you seen the guard? I mean, his cellmate at the time. Have you seen the picture?
I have not.
I almost want you to Google this right now. I almost want you to Google Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate just to see the person that was in there with him that reported him dead. And do that on your own time. And people, if you're watching, Google who was in his cell with him. I mean, this guy was a monster. But I want to ask you, knowing what you know about this case, and I don't know, I'm just speaking hypothetically here, but knowing what you know about this case and the prison guards being gone and his cellmate that's freaking a huge monster, looks like a heavyweight MMA fighter, and the cameras being off, with that information that I just presented to you, do you think he killed himself, or was he killed?
I'm certainly leaning towards the idea that he didn't kill himself, but again, first of all, I would have to read up a lot more to like form a particularly clear opinion, and even then, I think we'll never definitively know either way, right? That's the thing.
No.
And so it's hard for me to say that he definitively didn't kill himself, but it certainly, with the information I have, seems more likely than not that he did not kill himself. There was a lot of negations. It is more likely that he was killed. There, I got rid of the negations. That's more understandable.
Yeah, I mean, when you take things like that, and, again, the topic being how do conspiracies come to be, that's what I mean about the concrete evidence you have and the things that took place during this time. And like you mentioned the flat earth, with the earth being flat, like, it would take a lot of people, NASA, all the space agencies. India has a space agency. Russia has a space agency. China you'd have to keep all these people quiet. So I understand with the conspiracy of that magnitude, it's hard to keep so many people hushed. But there is a rabbit hole we could go down there, which I'm not going to do it. But in this case, with it having 3, 4, 5 people, hey, here's where I'll make your bank account look a little better for the rest of your life. Just, I mean, that it seems a little more plausible.
Yeah, and I think with those bigger conspiracy theories, there we'd have to ask like how they come about, and a lot of that comes with, I think, with distrust in a lot of organizations and in sort of the official narrative, right? So when people stop trusting the government and they stop trusting the agencies, which are for the most part run by governments, then it's very easy for people to start doubting a lot of things that the government says, even those that seem far-fetched, right? Like the flat earth thing, where it's like, okay, yes, you don't trust NASA. I don't think there's any particular reason to distrust NASA, but like, fair enough, right? But then also distrusting ESA and Roscosmos and like SpaceX and what have you, right? It's like, oh, now you're distrusting like various corporations and governments across the entire world, and that is a little more far-fetched.
Well, see, okay, I didn't want to go down, and I'm not gonna lie, trash talkers, everyone watching this, at some point I was balls deep in the flat Earth theory.
I remember, yes.
Yes, and I don't know. I don't know, and I would lean more towards that the Earth is round. And I don't really want to touch on this much, but if you wanted to keep all these people under wraps, or like all these agencies, you just teach them. I mean, they don't know just as much as we don't know, and I don't know. JJ, let's get off the planet.
Yeah,
please. Yeah, Smokey. Yes, yeah, we're not going to do that. But no, as far as things like that, man, it just depends on the magnitude and how many people are involved, and there's a lot of variables when it comes to a conspiracy theory blowing up to the point where masses start to believe in it. Like Bigfoot was only a thing in the Northwest, and I want to say like in the Aztec or down in South America. But now you being in Germany, you know about Bigfoot, right?
I mean, yeah, Bigfoot is an international phenomenon. Yeah.
Yeah, so it started in a very small place, and then word of mouth spread it. And then we could even talk about UFOs. Like UFOs, that is something that's worldwide. I mean, it's worldwide. But the thing with me about UFOs is like, first of all, I can't like you. I'm with you on this part because you can't definitively say yes, this is real. No, this isn't. You can't because you don't have enough evidence to prove that. Now, I will say I'm pretty sure that there's not a flock of big ape men walking around the woods. I'm pretty sure that's not happening. If it is, then we have these high-tech cameras. I mean, literally everyone has a camera on them. Mm-hmm. We're still getting grainy footage of UFOs. We're still getting grainy footage of, tall dudes and that look like ape men. It's like if I can watch a World Star video of a fight being hit by 17 people fighting, and this in clear HD, with all these people seeing UFOs, why isn't there clear videos? And there are some interesting ones out there, but my thing is with the accessibility of cameras and the internet and social media, why don't we see more clear evidence?
Yeah, and I think it's also the idea that a lot of things, kind of the conspiracy theories, at least some of them do tend to correlate with what is in the public conscience in general. So you have that thing where a lot of people started seeing UFOs around the time when we started learning more about space, and space was more in the public consciousness and around the space race. And so there were...
What do you think that's about? Do you think that's about people are just looking up more? What do you think that's about?
Well, I think it's people are looking up more, but also I think when people see something that they don't have an explanation for, they oftentimes want to come up with an explanation. It also goes into why conspiracy theories happen in the first place, right? They want an explanation. And so,
right.
If you lived in the Middle Ages, right, and you saw a light in the sky that you couldn't explain, you wouldn't say it's a UFO, because you don't have a concept of a UFO. You would say it's like a fairy or something, because that's something that is relevant to your cultural context. And so, a lot of that matters where UFOs sightings are very much related to people thinking about space and thinking about aliens. And there was that thing where some of the early photographs of Mars seemed to show patterns that look like roads, right? And so around that time, a lot of people with sleep paralysis started reporting that they were being abducted by Martians, right? Because you know the whole sleep paralysis demon thing, where it's like you see like something during sleep paralysis and people interpreted it as Martians. Then we got higher resolution photos, and it turns out that the supposed streets of Mars were actually like not really there. It was more just down to the photo quality and like some shadows. And there was a thing about the smiley face, which was actually also just shadows cast from certain rocks.
Yeah. I think that was on the moon, though, not Mars. The smiley
face might have been. I'm not 100% sure. But either way, right? Like those sort of things where first you think you see something and then it turns out to not be anything. And the next thing was that people started talking about being abducted by Venusians, right? Aliens from Venus. Because like, turns out there's no life on Mars. Well, there might be, but like not to that level. And it's like, right? So now they're from Venus. And then it turns out Venus is actually just a cloud of hot gas and nothing can live there. And all of a sudden, right, they're from further away. They're like from the next solar system or from the next galaxy over, right? And it's like, it turns out that a lot of it clearly is just people's imagination kind of being caught by things that I've heard on the news. And
yes,
you kind of have to adjust for those sort of things because those theories are most commonly explained by that. And I'm sure some of the UFO sightings were in fact UFOs in the sense of the literal meaning of the term,
an unidentified
flying object.
Yes.
And we're talking about, prototype aircraft, right? A lot of that happened during the time of the Cold War, right? So it's very plausible that there were like experimental US planes flying over the US and maybe even over Russia and vice versa, right? Where if they have experimental aircraft flying around that people wouldn't be used to seeing, then that can explain a lot of those things that it's like, this doesn't behave like anything that I'm used to because it's something new that they're trying out. And so
right.
One thing that is a little weird, although I, again, haven't looked that deeply into it and I definitely don't have any specific opinions on it, but the whole Roswell situation with the supposed weather balloon landing in Roswell, New Mexico.
No. That's weird, dude. That's a weird one.
Which, like, there's so much that doesn't line up with the official story that it seems almost guaranteed that something isn't quite what it seems. I wouldn't necessarily go to aliens, right? But there is a very real possibility there was, again, some experimental aircraft, either from the US itself that they just didn't want to publicize, or from an enemy force, again, most likely the Soviets around the time.
Yes, the Russians.
When they were flying some sort of experimental spy plane, and the US wanted to look at the tech, but they didn't necessarily want to publicize the whole situation. So, not to mention that it would have escalated the war further, but the Cold War, that is, and it might have gone hot. And so there is a lot of reason to assume that there was something going on there, but it's very hard to definitively say, it was definitely aliens, because that seems like, even with the sort of conspiratorial ideas, that seems like one of the more out there ones that I think has mostly been popular at the time, because aliens were generally popular at the time.
Yes. And you had brought up a good point, when you had said, like, people in the early days, when they saw, a light in the sky, they wouldn't say, that's a UFO. They would call it a fairy, like you said, because their brain doesn't know what a UFO is because it hasn't been, taught to them or to the people they know. And what the human brain likes to do a lot of time is when we see things that we do not understand, our brain tries to make sense of it. And you're like, well, what is it? What is it? Well, I did see this one day and I saw this. So maybe it was a combination of the both. And then something else that we do when your brain does that and you're like, okay, I saw something that's unexplainable. And your brain's like, okay, we cannot explain this. We have to figure out a way to explain it to people. And when you say what you thought that you saw and explained it and do that over and over and over and over again, eventually you start to believe what your brain made you think you saw, when in all actuality it could have been ball lightning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, especially because every time you retrieve a memory, your brain does slightly alter it. I mean, sometimes it has been overstated a little bit, but there is a truth to it where slowly over time memories can get corrupted, and then especially if your belief about the memory doesn't line up with the actual sensory experience of it, then obviously that the memory itself will slowly shift more towards that belief, especially because I don't think there's anything in our brains that are like very precisely storing sensory information. So it's very likely that your memory of it is almost more informed by your perception of the event, a sort of mental perception as well, rather than just the literal. And so, yeah, it will. Like, if you say you saw a weird light and you keep telling people it's a UFO, or people keep telling you it's a UFO because they already believe it, then maybe eventually you'll say that you saw a flying saucer with a light on it or something, despite the fact that you initially just saw a light, and you might genuinely believe it at that point. And that's also one of those problems that both your senses and your memory are not perfectly reliable, or far from perfectly reliable, as a matter of fact. When there's been experiments done...
Well, yeah, I mean,
where they
That
told people about a story that happened in their childhood that didn't actually happen. Like, psychologists were basically, like, doing experiments where they, like, told someone, like, something about their... I don't remember the exact setup of the experiment, but they ended up actually, like, inducing completely manufactured memories from, like... I don't know if it was specifically childhood, but, like, oh yeah, like, a couple years ago, like, this and that, and, like, people started genuinely believing those things after they've been told them often enough. And so, it's wild what your memory can do with information that you're given, so... It makes sense
and
that
you
people
saying
would be fooled.
yes, 100%. You're saying that people, it's wild what your brain can do, but also, and if you take that to the court of law, the one thing that doesn't stand up most, or the least, the least concrete thing that you can use in the court of law, at least in the U.S., is eyewitness. Like having an eyewitness. Like, you know what I mean? It goes back to, well, I thought I saw something, but you really can't. It's kind of admissible in court because, I mean, you could be lying, you could be delusional, you could be making up something, and that could be the thing with these UFOs and, you know, these Bigfoot sightings and leprechauns, and even, like, we could talk about, you know, like the folklore thing, like Mothman or werewolves or Siren Head or Slenderman. Like, this could all be things. Now, actually, I think we could, that might be a little different, actually. You know, and I'm segueing into, you know, what we were talking about as far as folklore, but I think in the conspiracy side of things, there's more truthful to it. Or not truthful, but there seems to have more plausibility towards a conspiracy theory versus a Mothman walking around Chicago every Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, you know?
I mean, I think there's some overlap because, like, literally, I think the first thing you mentioned when we started talking about conspiracy theories was Bigfoot, right? And I would say that Bigfoot almost fits more in the sort of urban legend folklore kind of realm, and so there is clearly some overlap there. And especially, again, we talked a lot about aliens as well. Those are almost in a way more like those folklore creatures, right? Where, yes, they are somewhat scientifically plausible that they could exist, although it's unlikely that they would reach us. And so, conspiracy theories, for the most part, tend to try to be somewhat more plausible, especially because oftentimes the proponents of those theories will obviously genuinely believe them, whereas sometimes the folklore stories will just be spread because they're interesting. And so, there is a certain different approach to it. I definitely agree with that, but there is also still, nonetheless, a lot of overlap. What is interesting also, and I think after this point we should probably move on because we have a sector for the other stuff, but you mentioned how folklore can spread and how ideas like the Bigfoot became first a regional thing and then they became sort of a national and even international thing. And that can actually have some interesting effects, especially in terms of older stories, where the way they spread can actually have them morph along the way. And obviously in the internet age, it's a lot harder to do because if someone looks it up online, they'll all come across the same story. But the chupacabra is a good example. I think it comes originally from Mexico and then made its way into the southern US. And I think the original version is more humanoid, but the US version is oftentimes more dog-like, right? And so it's like,
yes,
those are two completely different creatures, right? Someone just heard someone talk about something weird being caused by chupacabra, and then like they saw something else weird and they just attributed it to a chupacabra despite the fact that it was a completely different thing, right?
Well, that if you ask me about that goes along the line of a game. You know, are you familiar with the game Telephone?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I think it is you tell one person, hey, I went to the store on a Monday, and then you tell 100 other people and it becomes, hey, I had sex with a whore on a Thursday. You know, sounds the same, but it's not the same. You know, I think that's what you contribute that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's partially that and partially just that. Whenever you hear something, you make the connections, right? And so, like the alien thing, where it's like, as soon as someone hears about aliens, like, and everyone starts seeing aliens, then if you see something weird, you're also attributed to aliens, and so I think that might also play into it, but again, both of those, I think, are factors. And obviously, sometimes you get, although that's more in the folklore side as well, you get those ideas where a lot of cultural connections get made as well, and then those can be changing that, where, like, a lot of countries, their folklore slightly changed as soon as Christians came into started colonizing, and then all of a sudden, like, previously peaceful spirits started being seen as more aggressive because the descriptions of the spirits weren't really all that godly, and so there's a lot of interesting stuff in that realm as well.
Yeah, well, and actually, if you want to go a little deeper here, Bigfoot was actually a thing at one point. Gigantopithecus. It was actually a thing that went extinct. So maybe that goes along the line with the South American or Mexican folklore with chupacabra. Maybe it was actually a thing that their great 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 grandfather saw, and they told their children, and so on and so on, to where the story became, hey, my grandmother told me she saw this. When again, it goes back to the game of telephone. But with Bigfoot, I don't know if you want to call it Bigfoot, but Gigantopithecus was an actual animal that did exist, and that could be the same thing where we just told stories and stories of something that existed so long ago, and it just kept telling over generation until it gets to our generation, and now we want to believe in this mythical creature,
I'm not sure if the timeline for that really works out, because I think those probably died hundreds of thousands of years ago, I would assume. I am not entirely certain, but so that might not add up perfectly, but I think that also falls more into the folklore side of things, so let's move on to the facts, and then do halftime show, and then come back to the second topic after that, which I guess brings us to, what is your fact of the week?
Oh, man. This is an interesting one, and you being a very smart guy, I'm curious to know. First, I know you've done so. What episode is this again? Is this 282? I think it is. Yes, 282. So you doing so many podcasts and me doing so many podcasts, but you guys having this segment of Fact of the Week. I'm curious if you've heard this, and if you haven't heard this, I'm wondering how it works. But my Fact of the Week is, between birth and death, the human body goes from having 300 bones to just 206. Now, my question is,
how?
How?
I haven't heard it that precisely, but I know certain things definitely do change over time. I know there might be some vestigial bones that actually the body does still create, but that then end up just getting destroyed over the lifetime. I'm not 100% sure. But one thing that I do know, for example, is that right at the top of your head, there is like an actual like a sort of a rift between the two halves of the skull, basically. So that it can squeeze together a little bit, so that the child can actually fit to escape the womb, and that also takes a couple months until it goes back together, or until it fuses together like permanently. And so I think there are some other bones in the body that have a similar situation where I'm not sure about the skull. I think the skull is in other places connected even before then, but so you have those situations where I think we have like two bones in a place, and then as you get older, they fuse together and become one bone. So I think that might be a factor in that. I'm not sure if it explains all of it, but it is a factor.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. There is a small synopsis on here. It says a quarter of your bones are in your feet. And bonus, babies have 94 more bones than adults do. I mean, that's an interesting fact, dude. It's like, I mean, the fusion thing I could see is probably the more logical thing, I guess you would say. Like, hey, when you're a baby, maybe you have two bones in your toe and your big toe, and as you grow, they eventually fuse. That's the only thing I can think of logically.
I think there was one bone, but it's something that I've heard over a decade ago, so I don't know the details anymore. But there was one bone that actually fuses, I think, relatively late in your life. I think like in your teenage years or something, where like two bones fuse together.
Really?
And so those can actually be used to determine the age of a skeleton, like if it's like a teenager or an actual adult.
Do you know what bone it is?
I do not. Again, that's something that I've read about 10, 15 years ago, right? So like I wouldn't know that anymore. That actually, I think it was in a novel that I was reading at the time. But yeah, and I don't remember the details on that. But yeah, there's some stuff like that. So it doesn't make sense when you think about it that there are certain things that could change. I'm not sure if there are any bones that full on disappear. I could still see some of that being plausible, but it kind of seems weird that your body would create a bone and then get rid of it. But certainly...
Yeah, because where would it go other than fusing? Like, that's my thing, is like, where would it go other than fusing to another bone?
I mean, your bones could also lose mass in certain situations, right? So your body can dissolve your bones effectively. That is definitely plausible. I mean, most cells in your body do get renewed eventually. And so you could have some cells just not get renewed and stuff like that. So it's not entirely plausible, but it would have to be something small. You wouldn't just You wouldn't just like lose like a big bone in your arm or
Lose
something.
a femur. Exactly. Yeah. Right. But you had said your body dissolves bones? Is that true? I don't know if that's true.
I don't know of any like fully dissolving, but I do know that your body can attack your bones and that your bones can go brittle and they can get lighter over time. And that also depends a little bit on like diet and environmental circumstances, but so
age.
So it could be that some bones completely disappear there. I haven't heard of anything like that, but it is at least plausible. And then, of course, the fusing thing I know for a fact happens, at least in some cases, at least in some places. So that is something where that definitely plays a role in it. I'm not sure if that's the only explanation, though.
Yeah. And before we get to your factor, it seemed a little weird if your entire shin bone just randomly disappeared when you turned 7, dude. What the hell happened to my shin? You know, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, depending on how you look at it, you could say that some older people tend to, you know, not have their knees anymore and stuff like that, but that's not a natural process as much as it's just, like, surgically replacing it after they're, like, completely busted. They don't really disappear, though. Although it is actually possible that maybe I think the knee also has, like, some very small bones in it as well, that I'm not 100% sure what happens with those over the years. Yeah, and I mean, there's some other ones, right? Like I wouldn't be that shocked. I know there's some variants, for example, with the tailbone, right? Some people have one, some don't, I'm pretty sure. Or something like that, where, because it's, like, not really useful because we don't have tails. Although, there is also a genetic mutation, I believe, that does, that can have a baby being born with, like, a small vestigial tail. Like, not like, you know, but like, you know, sort of like a...
just like a protrusion from the skin.
Although I'm pretty sure that's one of those things that today would probably just be surgically removed at a young age. I'm not 100% sure, but I would assume so.
Dude, if I was a kid born with a tail, please don't remove it. I want that tail. I want my tail. If I have a tail, you let me keep it, damn it.
I mean, as far as operations done on babies, there's a lot of other fairly dubious stuff. But yeah, let's not necessarily get into that. That's not what we're talking about today.
No, let's not. Let's not.
My fact of the week is about something that you might be familiar with. Have you heard of sports?
No, never heard of them.
Well, so...
Of course, JJ, of course.
So, a lot of times in sports you have sort of uniforms, right? And the tops of those uniforms are sometimes called jerseys. Especially in football, it comes to mind the football jersey, sort of what I'm thinking of. Do you know why they're called that?
Why jerseys are called a jersey?
Yes.
That is a question. Why are jerseys called... I'm going to say it's the top half of your outfit, and I'm thinking as an American here, New Jersey being the top half of the states, maybe? No, anywhere?
So, it has nothing to do with New Jersey, but everything to do with Jersey. The original Jersey, that is. So, New Jersey, named after the island of Jersey, or rather, I think it might actually be multiple islands. But, so, the Channel Islands, right? Jersey and Guernsey are in the English Channel, as in they're off the coast of France, in between France and Britain, effectively, although closer to France. They are crown dependencies of Great Britain. But the interesting thing here is, right, in Jersey, they used to make thick wool sweaters. And football players used to wear those as a form of padding.
Was protection.
Before they actually wore pads. Like, as in, like, the pads as we would know them today. So the only padding that they had would be their thick sweaters, but at least it was better than nothing. And so they would wear those sweaters from Jersey, the so-called jerseys, and eventually, of course, as padding, like, actual, like, proper pads got introduced, the actual jerseys got thinner, but they still kept their name from the original source of the jerseys being the island of Jersey.
You know, that's one thing I really love about doing your podcast, man, is I take some of the facts that you give and then I'll go around, you know, my work day or my family and I'm like, hey, did you know this? Why they call that? So that's another tidbit I'm going to have to steal from you and say that I said it.
Yes. Which brings us to, would it be even better if I pull it up? There we go. To our halftime show. And we'll just get through this really quickly because I know you are just chomping at the bit to talk about folklore. But this is Would You Rather, and let's just move past this. And there we go. your company gives you two choices for a vacation. Would you
Wow,
rather
really?
vacation in Russia?
Listen,
or
there's no question.
Vacation in China.
Do I even need to answer this question? Come on, JJ. And if we're talking about today's climate, I want to go to China.
I think in today's situation, it probably makes more sense to go to China, although I think there's actually a point to be made that before 2022, but like after the ascension of Xi Jinping, there is actually an argument to be made that Russia is probably better for tourism maybe than China. Although actually, I guess tourists in China are not that terrible either. But like
I disagree. 100%.
There was, especially in the last years, China has become more and more restrictive, and so there is an argument to be made there. But then again, you could always just go to Hong Kong or Macau, which are part of China.
Yes. But
where the central government still has less control, although they have been extending their control over Hong Kong, especially. I think Macau might actually already have a lot of tighter control, but where obviously crackdown on Hong Kong.
Close? That close.
I mean, to be fair, this is an old question, right? I mean, the comments are from 10 years ago.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Can I see what...
does it say what year this is from?
I don't think it does. It says who added it, but it doesn't list a date, but it does say that the top comment is from 10 years ago. So, I'm assuming it's roughly 10 years old, that question. And maybe... I mean, obviously, people have continuously answered it since, but especially, again, when you started hearing about a lot of the issues about China, but you don't really hear as much about Russia negatively until they start conquering neighboring countries again. Which, I mean, they kind of have been doing for a while, but that's a whole different point. So I think it makes sense that people would pick Russia at certain times. So yeah. Yeah. Would you rather put a toothpick under each toenail and kick a wall, or be scalped? Yeah, no, those two both seem very uncomfortable.
That's one of my biggest fears, dude. Oh my god, JJ.
What?
Oh.
Which one?
To put a toothpick between your toenail. Oh, that bothers me, dude. Oh, listen, I'm a grown man, and I'm I consider myself a tough guy, but there are some things that just make my skin crawl, and both of these are one.
Honestly, in terms of
oh my god, dude.
In terms of making my skin crawl, it's probably more the former than the latter. Not that I would want to experience either of them, obviously, but the whole putting things under nails of... I feel like you see more common with fingernails when it's like portraying media as like a torture method. But yeah, I know what my answer is, but...
JJ, listen, I love you to death, brother, but can we please get past this one? Because this is making... wait, no, I'll say, yeah, that's what I was going to say, is put a toothpick. Yeah, that's... I don't know why that freaks me out so much.
First of all, less permanent damage. Second of all, they don't tell you how to kick the wall. So you don't actually have to kick it with the front of your toes. And they don't tell you how to put them under there, so it doesn't even have to actually hurt. You just loosely put them under there and kick it with your heel, and then you don't even feel anything.
Okay, I get it, bro. Get it.
Would you rather be in the Left 4 Dead universe or the Walking Dead universe?
Can you educate me slightly on what Left 4 Dead is? I know Walking Dead, but...
Left 4 Dead is a video game, I believe, made by Valve, about a post-apocalyptic world overrun by, you guessed it, zombies. I think the main differences to The Walking Dead is, first of all, I think The Walking Dead has more survivors. Although, it's not entirely clear, I think, from Left 4 Dead, from what I've played, because you don't really go throughout the entire world, although that's the same in The Walking Dead. The one other big distinction is that there are special zombies in Left 4 Dead, like the jockey and the tank and the spitter and those sort of types, which have special abilities. So, which is why I would go with The Walking Dead.
Yes. Okay. Now, first of all, not only because The Walking Dead is filmed here in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm gonna have to say The Walking Dead. That's what I'm gonna.
There's a lot of stuff filmed in Georgia, right? Because you guys,
dude,
you guys give like tax breaks or whatever to film crews, and so I feel like everything is filmed either in LA,
New York, or Atlanta.
Well, I was gonna say in like Georgia, Vancouver, or Toronto. But in Atlanta, Toronto, or Vancouver. I don't know if it was Vancouver, but there's a couple places in Canada that also, again, I think Toronto is very common. You see Georgia a lot. I'm sure there are things shot in other places as well, but like those come to mind. Where it's like in Georgia and Ontario to have. I think Quebec too.
Obviously, the name Hollywood. Not my name Hollywood, but Hollywood coming from Hollywood, Los Angeles. So there's still a lot of Hollywood.
Sure, but especially with like city shots, they oftentimes do use. Again, they use oftentimes Toronto and Atlanta as like filling in for other cities, or they'll just like use like drone footage from like the actual city that they're supposed to be in, and then the close-ups are of a different city.
Well, before we get off this question, though, I want to ask you, if you were... Okay, you chose Walking Dead, right?
Yes.
If you could pick one weapon to defend yourself, what weapon would it be?
There's a couple of practical considerations, but you almost have to pick a sword or a machete or something, because as much as I want to say crossbow...
Chainsaw.
You know how quick you're going to run out of gas,
Yeah, but you could get electric chainsaws to where you have unlimited batteries that are. I would go with a chainsaw. So you say a sword or a katana?
I was saying like a sword or a machete or something to that effect, because my one of the other things that I'm tempted by to say is something like crossbow, but bolts are kind of tough to come. Yeah, the crossbow bolts are kind of difficult to come by. You can make your own. That shouldn't be that big of an issue. But the second thing is, you're kind of screwed if you just have the one weapon if they get closer to you. Whereas with a melee weapon, while, of course, if a horde is coming towards you, you can't... Well, if it's a large horde, it doesn't matter anyways. But if there's like a handful of zombies coming towards you, you can't really pick them off before they get to you. But at least... In the other case, right, if you don't pick them all off, then you're fucked once they get to you. Whereas with a sharp weapon, you can still try to, like, approach them from the correct angle, and obviously if they're far enough away, you can always just run away. Which would always be my preferred solution, right? I'm not risking contact with a zombie if I don't absolutely have to.
Yeah, I get it. And also having an actual blade, which I have 3 katanas back here behind me, but you don't run out of ammo. The only thing you'll have to do to improve that is just sharpen it as you're using it so much to chop zombie heads off.
Yeah, and again, I think it's probably good to go with something with a fairly long blade and with a fairly sharp blade, obviously. So, yeah, as you said, like a katana or a European longsword, which are a bit heavier, I think, but they are still fairly...
those are heavy.
Actually, you probably would want to go with a one-handed sword. But yeah, so sort of something with like I wouldn't even know, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Let's do this one more, and then we can go into the second topic, since you were fairly keen to talk about it earlier. Would you rather return a punt in an NFL game or spend 90 seconds in the ring with Mike Tyson in his prime?
Oh, wow. I'm going to say spend 90 seconds in the ring with Mike Tyson in his prime, simply because I'm a combat sports fan. And just to say that, just to be at a bar with your friends, it was like, dude, I spent 90 seconds in the freaking ring with the baddest man on the planet in his prime. I'm going with Mike Tyson.
Yeah, damn it. 85 of them, I was unconscious, but god damn it, I was there.
I was there, damn it.
I would probably go with the punt return, because while it is still... First of all, it's not as dangerous as a kick return, but even like either one of those is probably still like less dangerous to your health than being in a boxing game. If you had to like run every single return in an entire game, you might run a comparable risk, but like, it just gotta be a little careful for a little moment, but like, you're not constantly...
You're looking at it from a safety point of view. I'm looking at it from a, no, damn it, I did this.
Yes.
Oh, of course. I knew that's what was going to be the case.
Obviously, the idea here is, right, like, how much do you want to get pummeled? And obviously the answer is less. Okay, that brings us to the second topic. It's basically just more or less a continuation of the first topic, but we're maybe focusing a bit more on folklore, urban legends, and creepypasta. I think it's all kind of the same thing. Creepypasta in a lot of ways is just modern urban legends. And urban legends in a way are just folklore but in the city, right? So it's...
Yes. Oh wow, is that why they call it urban legend? Is it strictly simply because it's focused in a city?
I think a lot of
I
urban
didn't know
legends
that.
aren't even like in large cities. I think that also sounds oftentimes in small towns. I think it's more so because folklore is also even older. So I think it's maybe more so about the fact that urban legends are from around the time when we live in cities, more so than they're all necessarily strictly from cities. Although I'm sure the term does come from some sort of legend that was actually within the city. I would assume, but I don't know. As a matter of fact, why don't I? Urban legend etymology.
What's the etymology behind urban legend? I'm curious.
Oh, great! They gave me a definition. I was looking for the etymology. What is the origin of the term urban legend? Yes, thank you. An urban legend is a tale which purports to actually be true, but which has little basis. That's a definition. Oh, right. There it is. What makes urban legends urban is the fact that they're set in contemporary urban settings and are widely believed today, as opposed to more traditional legends and myths which are set further in the past and are largely disbelieved by modern audiences. So yes, it has to do with urban environments, although it doesn't strictly have to be, I think, because oftentimes things will be called urban legends even if they happen in like small towns or even some things where it's like, oh, this is in the woods by the town or something.
It has to be in a city that's populated, I guess. It, I don't know, dude. It's well when you take okay, what is the difference between an urban legend and folklore? Like, what is the difference? They both. Yes, I know the name of each folklore and urban legend. They have different definitions, but aren't they basically the same thing?
Well, yeah, that's kind of why I put all three as the topic here, where folklore, I think, kind of as the description I just read out said, right? Like, I mean, it didn't mention folklore by name, but it mentioned myth and legends, right? And folklore are more traditional. They have existed for longer, and a lot of folklore is no longer believed, or at least no longer widely believed. Whereas urban legends, well, I mean, they're not necessarily widespread as in everyone believes them, but have maybe more believers and are certainly oftentimes much more recent in origin. I think that's the main difference. So I think it's a lot of this is a time thing, right? So first there was like folklore and mythology, then there were urban legends, and then eventually the internet came along and we had creepypastas, which the creepypastas are a little bit different because generally most creepypastas are not actually things that people really believe, although in some cases they still are. But I think they're
Slenderman. That's the best example, if you ask me, right?
Yeah, and that one definitely had some widespread belief, at least a little bit. It's like some people believing it to be real, or the others also believing certain variations thereon, where it's like, oh, there's like a guy that dresses out as Slenderman and kills people. Like those sort of stories went around. Those are almost getting more into the urban legend realm again. But yeah, I think that is sort of the big difference, I think, is between urban legends and creepypastas, besides the fact that creepypastas are more online and urban legends are oftentimes more local. I think it's also just the idea that creepypastas are oftentimes just made for entertainment's sake, and people will see them as such, whereas urban legends are those, stories that, kids tell each other around a campfire, and that actually get spread around, and that, okay, maybe not exactly that parents tell their children to make them not do bad things. That's more in the folklore realm almost again. Which is also where a lot of folklore comes from.
100%. Yes. Hey, if you're gonna be bad, the boogeyman's gonna come get you.
I mean, there's those abstract things, and then there's much more general things, right? Like, much more specific things, like there are witches in the woods, right? Don't go into the woods at night, or the witches will get you. It's like, no, they won't, but a bear or a wolf might, right? So it's like,
exactly,
or even just like get lost, right? Like that's bad enough, and so
yeah.
It makes sense. Some of those stories do come from those sort of origins, right? They're, it's that whole thing, like if you don't brush your teeth, I think there's also some versions of that where, I don't think there's like a specific folklore creature associated with it, but also like, again, like like if you don't go to bed in time, if you stay up at night, like, there's all sorts of things where the parents just want to get their kids to behave, and that's an easy shortcut to get them to do it.
Yes. I agree 100%. But, speaking on, I don't know if you would consider this more folklore. I would just say superstition. But, me being quarter Irish, like if a black cat crosses your path, you have to turn around in a complete circle 3 times. You have to. I don't know if you want to call that folklore. In my family, we call it superstition. there's one that my my grandmother being an immigrant from Ireland, but if she's in the kitchen and she's sweeping her kitchen floor, she accidentally sweeps your feet with the broom. You have to grab the broom and spit on it, because if you don't, then you'll probably have like a freaking chandelier fall on your head or a broken mirror in your house. You're supposed to, in my family, I was taught, if you break a mirror, you're gonna get 7 years of bad luck. And the way to counteract that is to take a piece of that mirror, just one piece, and then break that into two. I mean, there's so many walking under ladders, opening umbrellas in your house. In that sense, I don't necessarily think it would be like something to not necessarily discipline your children, like, hey, don't go in the woods, like you said, or the witches that get you. In our case, or yes, I can say that. In our case, I really, damn, now that I think about it, I really don't know where those come from. It's just,
well, a lot of those are about bad luck, right? And so I think the story comes to be when, maybe, again, people are looking for connections, right? And it's like, oh, something bad happened to me and I broke a mirror yesterday, maybe there's a connection, right? And then if someone throws it out as an idea and then the next person who breaks a mirror also has bad luck, then that's a pattern, right? And all of a sudden, people start connecting things that aren't really there. I mean, the ladder thing, I think, might genuinely have a more security-based reason as well, where a lot of bad shit can happen if you walk under a ladder, right? There's probably construction around. If someone is on the ladder, they might drop something. It's not like every time you walk under a ladder, something bad happens, but it's probably often enough to where the correlation there might actually come from, like, a real underlying phenomenon. But a lot of the things like black cats or salt or brooms or mirrors, right, that sort of stuff, I think it is just a superstition arising from maybe some coincidences happening, and then those just being associated, and then that also gets passed down. And it's one of those things where people will also say, right, as you said, there's a lot of those things, most of them have, like, a cure, if you will, right? Like, oh yeah, you have bad luck.
Or leaf clover, the rabbit's foot.
Yeah, also, those are the sort of generic things for good luck, but also the ones you mentioned, where it's like, if you said if you break a mirror, you break another piece of it one more time, and then you don't have bad luck anymore. It's like, people will, if they've heard that is the case, and they break a mirror, they might think, even if they don't deeply believe it, they're like, might as well, right? If it isn't true, I just broke something that's already broken, right? Big whoop. If it is true, I just saved myself from bad luck, right? So there's that idea where the cost is very low, but the potential gain, even if it is very unlikely, is fairly high. And so I think that is how those sort of things, once they get started, also get perpetuated and kind of stay that way.
I brought up some, and they're pretty much worldwide accepted now with those superstitions I previously brought up. But just curious, are there any German superstitions that most people don't know about? Like, hey, you got to do this. Like, if this happens, then you got to do this, or this will happen.
I mean, it's a lot of those same things that you said. I mean, I've never heard the broom one, but like the whole, like, breaking mirrors being bad luck and that sort of thing. I think there's two things that come to mind that are maybe more German specific. I know there's some saying about black cats. I don't remember how the exact thing goes, but the whole thing that always gets said is like, black cat from the left, right? So the black cat thing is much more, but it's like, if a black cat crosses your path coming from your left,
yes,
that is bad luck, very specifically. So that is slightly different from what you said.
Right. I just know if it crosses your path, but okay, what's your second one?
And the second thing, and I think that's also much more broadly European, because obviously, a lot of countries shifting borders, all open borders at the time, so a lot of those things do get spread, but definitely also in Germany is the thing about clinking your glasses, right? So like, or how, so when you say cheers and you clink your glasses, you're supposed to look the other person in the eyes, or otherwise you have 7 years of bad sex.
Wow, I didn't know that, but I do that out of a sign of respect. When you say cheers, you look the person that you're cheering in the eyes, but is that why I haven't been getting laid these past few days?
I mean, that is a superstition. Oh, and another one I just remembered that is also very German. I've actually never heard it from anywhere else. Is it's supposed to be bad luck to congratulate someone on their birthday before the actual day of the birthday. So I know some Americans will do that, right? They'll, like, if your birthday's on the weekend and, like, someone sees you on Friday and work, and they'll be like, oh yeah, happy birthday, right? Despite the fact that your birthday hasn't happened yet. or at least I've heard. But like in Germany, you would never do that because historically the superstition goes that if you wish someone a happy birthday before it's their actual birthday, that's bad luck.
Well, is there a counteract to that? How do you counteract that if someone does that?
I don't know anything specific. As a matter of fact, I don't remember anything with like counteraction. So you mentioned the mirror thing, and I know that breaking a mirror being 7 years of bad luck. That's also something that is also very common in Germany. But I've never heard someone say you break a piece of it to make it go away. So I've never actually. The only thing that I've heard, which I think you mentioned as well when we talked about it beforehand, I don't think you mentioned it on the podcast, is when you spill some salt, you throw some over your shoulder. That one I've heard, but.
Yes.
Most of the other ones, I've just heard like, oh, this and that is bad luck, and then that's it, right? Like, I usually don't know of any sort of specific cures, but obviously we also have like good luck charms, 4-leaf clovers. I'm not sure if rabbit's foot is that common around here, but horseshoe.
Really?
Horseshoe.
Oh yes, 100%. Which I have all three in my house. I have probably all three in here, but yes, 4-leaf clovers. Horseshoes, and the horseshoe has to be facing up because if it goes down, then all your luck is running out. You have to have it up to collect luck, and it has to be at your front door. I mean, and the whole broom thing sweeping on your feet. I want to say that's more of a southern thing. Being down in the south, I want to say that's more of a southern thing. But this all ties into the folklore, into the mythical creatures and superstitions that we have as people, and you made a very valid point. You made a very valid point to where it could just be a way to basically not control your kids, but in a way like, hey, my child loves to go outside and run around all night while I'm in the bed at 9:00. Well, you know what? The witch is going to get you if you do that. So to me, I think that's a very good reason as to why a lot of these things exist. Yeah. It's just to keep people from doing it.
And oftentimes it's one of those things where the dangers, oftentimes sometimes it's just to get them to behave, but sometimes it's also to actually make them do things that are actually good for them or to avoid them doing things that are bad for them. Right? Like the being in the woods thing where it's like, there isn't really a compelling reason to tell your child why they shouldn't go in the woods. I mean, yeah, there might be animals there, right? But like a lot of that seems more abstract, and then like actually teaching your kids also that those animals are dangerous, right? Where it's like, they look so fluffy, it's that, but if there's a witch around, like, oh yeah, witches are dangerous, right? Like that's kind of, it seems like a more visceral image, right? And so I think that also plays into it, where oftentimes the truth is just maybe less convincing than the lie, especially when the kids are at an age where they will just believe anything you say.
Man, see, even then, if you take that route, you have to, like, let's take Santa Claus, for example. Why tell your kids about a mythical person that did exist at one point, St. Nicholas? Some people would argue that he didn't, but I tell them, hey, if you're bad, you're going to get coal, but if you're good, we'll buy you presents. Like, it's so weird when you think about it. It's like, why is that? I mean, why do we do that?
I mean, first of all, I don't know how it is in America, but in Germany, St. Nicholas and Santa Claus are considered two separate people.
Wow. So who's Santa Claus over there? Oh, well, wait, dang it, what's his name? Is it Kris Kringle? Is Kris Kringle and Saint Nick not the same person?
I don't know if we just call him. Well, we basically just call him the Christmas man, right? I don't know if there's a deep folklore behind it. And then Saint Nicholas, we call it Nikolaus, which and then so the Saint Nicholas Day actually is the 6th of December for us, and usually like kids will get like a small present or something, and then actual Christmas Day, well, either first day of Christmas or sometimes the night before Christmas, it depends, will be the gift-giving thing, like the big thing. So there's actually two separate things there, as a small fun cultural fact. Where was I going with this? All right, I mean, there's an element of getting your kids to behave as well. It's like, oh, if you don't behave, you get cold, right? That whole thing. But I don't know why the general sort of story around it exists. I mean, obviously, again, St. Nicholas, as far as I know, a real person, and obviously has been an inspiration for a lot of those things. I don't know exactly.
I mean, as far as the Santa Claus things, I mean, I have heard one of the best explanations is, okay, back in the day, basically Santa Claus is a mushroom. crazy, but there's a mushroom called the Animaria it's a Animata muscaria or something like that, which is a red and white mushroom that only appears during the colder, winter months. And deer love these things, so they'll go out. Which you got the red and white mushroom that grows under a pine tree, usually comes from like the sap or the tar, which is where the Christmas tree comes from. And then the reindeer flock to these things, so people would take these mushrooms and would deliver them to people to get the reindeer to come to them, which they would tend to kill and eat and use to feed their family. Which I don't know how true this is, but this is a theory as to why you have Christmas trees and reindeer and Santa Claus, because the mushroom, red and white, would grow under a tree, which is the present that's going to bring the reindeer to you, which the guy's going to bring the mushrooms to you to get the reindeer to you, which then becomes a present. I've heard that theory.
Hasn't the red and white the red and white Santa Claus costume been popularized by Coca-Cola? I thought it was.
Well, yeah,
it was a Coke
commercial. I'm talking before that, and it's called the Aminata mascara. That's what it's called. If you look at the Aminata mascara mushroom, it looks like Santa Claus. It's red and white, and again, this is just a theory. It's just a theory.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, whatever the origins are, I mean, it's one of those interesting stories, and the whole like Santa Claus and Tooth Fairy and those sort of things. I'm fascinated by the fact that they're still fairly ubiquitous today as things we teach children.
Yes,
and then I find it even more fascinating that people expect you to, like, as a child, you're supposed to believe it, and then eventually they either tell you that it's false or you find it out another way. But then, parallel to that, there's another magic man that they teach you about that you're not supposed to think is fake.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going here. I know, and that's so crazy. How do you expect me to believe in a big fat man that travels around the entire world within 24 hours, comes down chimneys, eat milk and cookies, and you tell me that's not real, but you want me to believe in something in the sky?
Yeah, right.
Is that where you're going?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's God, right? Like, it's like, okay, so, as an atheist...
Wow, hold on. Can God be considered a mythical creature?
Yes.
Wow, yes.
I mean, the main reason why people don't like it when you call Christian mythology, is because, they believe it's true. And so, obviously, they associate mythology with something that is untrue, which I think doesn't technically have to be the case, but obviously what we generally consider mythology is untrue. And so calling Christian mythology as such is oftentimes not something that Christians appreciate. But obviously I also personally believe that it's not true. But I find it interesting that, especially for religious people, although if I had any children, which I don't have any intention to, but I wouldn't necessarily want to even teach them about like Santa Claus and Tooth Fairy and those sort of things, because I think you can raise children with the truth, and you can actually teach them from a young age to not to make rational inquiry to the degree that you and I would, because obviously they don't have the capacity to do that to that degree, but to actually, look for reasonable things. And so I think starting them on a more realistic framework is still better for them developmentally. But I find it fascinating that Christians will teach their children all of those things, and then later, again, expect them to shed those beliefs, but keep the Christian beliefs that arguably are even crazier.
Right. Yes, are more outlandish. And I tend to stay away from politics and religion, but I know you're atheist, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's please not go down this road, but going down the after doing DMT, I thought I grew up as a Southern Baptist, and I thought of myself as an atheist. Like, wait a minute, there's Christians, there's Jews, there's Buddhists, there's Muslims. How do I know I have the right one? But after doing DMT, dude, it takes you somewhere where you just know. I don't know what I consider myself agnostic. I know there's something. If you've seen what I've seen, if you had the experience that I've experienced from someone who was an atheist, and like, Santa Claus isn't real, the Tooth Fairy isn't real, why would this be real? Well, I'm just going to live my life, the way that I should. I'm going to treat people nice, I'll treat people well, and hope they do the same to me. But after doing that DMT, which is endogenous in your brain, which happens to be right where your third eye is. And you cannot put it into words to what that experience is like. But when you're there, you feel a presence. And it just shows you that it's something, I don't know what. And this, I don't know what, which makes me agnostic. I can't say it's this, I can't say it's that. But when you go to that place, it's so hard to explain, JJ, but I went from being an atheist to believing there is something. I don't know what, but I will treat people nice and hope I get the same treatment in return because there's something out there. I mean, I know you don't believe that, but you haven't taken the DMT I've taken. And you should go on a trip with me one day, dude. You should go on a trip with me. It might change your mind, dude. Like it's the word God can almost be used as an umbrella as an umbrella term because some people say Jesus is God. Some people say Allah is God. Some people say Buddha is God. But all these people could just be one source of energy. Like it's so hard to explain.
So first of all, two small corrections. I think Buddha is generally not seen as a god. I think he's seen more akin to a prophet, but not quite that either.
You know what I meant, JJ. Come on.
And second of all, Allah is in early Arabic and means God. So yeah, duh.
That goes to the umbrella statement. Like,
yeah, no,
I get what you're saying. Allah's basically the translation
yes.
of Arabic. But go ahead.
I find it interesting, and I know that this isn't necessarily nitpick about what you said, but I find it interesting that we've kind of culturally, like most Western cultures, I think, have kind of accepted the idea that if someone says Allah, they refer to the Muslim God, whereas if they say God, they're referring to the Christian or Jewish God. But first of all, besides the fact that obviously those three are kind of all the same in that the religious texts are all based on the same stuff, I find it interesting with the whole translation thing, and I think it has something to do with the fact that Muslims tend to always read the Quran in Arabic, no matter where they're from, and that sort of thing. But I find it interesting that it kind of crystallized as sort of Allah means the Muslim God, unless you actually live in an Arabic-speaking country, in which case, then Allah, once again, is more of a generic term, and Arabic Christians, for example, will also use the term Allah to refer to their God, at least while speaking Arabic, because that's just the word. But, yeah, that's an interesting thing. About religious belief, obviously, I do think that you can have that sort of a trip and probably still not believe, because I think it also has a little bit to do with your attitude towards those things you see while high and how much you trust them. But at the end of the day, the idea that you said about treating people well and hoping that they treat you well in return, I think it's just a good way to approach life no matter what you believe in, right?
And, period. That's exactly.
And it kind of bugs me when people ask questions like, oh, if you're an atheist, how can you have morality? It's like,
no.
It's not like you decided to live your life based on what you've read in your holy book. You do still have that innate feeling of morality. And you might say it comes from God, but I have that feeling too, whether it comes from God or not, right? And so it doesn't really matter if I have the texts to back it up, right? I have my own rationalizations of how I come to moral decisions if I do want to question them, but you do oftentimes just have that instinct that you don't even have to go deeper to questioning. And I think it's just always a good policy to just treat people right. And
yes.
Also, I think the idea of hoping that people treat you well in return is partially a given, right? Where I don't believe in karma in the sort of spiritual way, but I do think there's a thing where people recognize if you treat people well. And they will then also treat you better in return, just as kind of an automatic social response on some level.
Well, I do believe, you put whatever you put out, it's going to come back to you. And I don't know if you want to call that karma or not, but just the circumstances that I have lived in my life, I know when I was doing effed up and, hurting people and harming people, I was getting effed up happening to me, and I was getting harmed and I was getting hurt. But once I stopped doing that, it doesn't happen anymore. And let me knock on wood. But speaking on the religious factor real quick, I just want to tell you a quick little story that happened to me the other day. I was at a bank and I was with a friend helping this friend open a bank account. And there was a elderly lady there. She might have been she might have been late 60s, early 70s. And she said, hey, the banker came to her and said, do you need what can I help you with? She's like, I need to make an account, open a banking account. And the lady said, well, did you create a appointment? And she said, no, can I make an appointment here? And the lady said, no, you can only make an appointment online. And she's like, listen, I'm 65, however old. She's like, I'm not really good with computers. So I told this lady, I said, hey, come have a seat with me. She sat down next to me. I said, we spoke. I introduced myself. She introduced herself to me. We talked for a while. And this might have a lot to do with just being in the South because we're in the Bible Belt. But this lady's like, I've been to this bank forever and I just need to I need to get a bank account open and I can't do it without having an appointment and I don't know how to use the phone that well. So I said, give me your phone. I went to her phone and I made her appointment for that day. And it was, hey, you got to come back today at 1:00 and they'll have it. She came back. Everything was fine, to my knowledge, or I hope everything was fine after making the appointment, which I'm sure it was. And then she said, you know what? I'm so happy there are still good people out here and chivalry's not dead and there's good guys. And she says, I hope God blesses your heart. And she said, make sure you read your Bible and God will continue to bless you. And I said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And usually I'm just like, thank you and you as well. But this time she went so deep into God after I just did a nice gesture. The only thing I asked her, I said, what would you say to me if I told you I didn't believe you? And she said, I would feel very sorry for you, and left. That hurt me, dude, because in my eyes, growing up as a Christian, you're not supposed to if I don't have, you may like chicken, I may hate chicken, but because we don't have the same views, but I just helped you with something and you accepted my help and we were so nice until you brought in your higher power. And I said, what if? I didn't say I didn't. I just said, what if I didn't believe in God? She just got up and left, man. And that just shows you how strong some people's faith are when it comes to these things that could be imaginary, could be just faith,
Yeah, and I think the problem there is that I don't think she meant anything bad by it, right? I think there's a thing where there's this genuinely held belief, right, that being a Christian sort of is the best for you, right? That's your way into heaven, right? And so when they say something like, oh yeah, then I'm sorry for you, right? Where it's like, she might genuinely be, right? And I'm not saying this based on anything rational, but that it's just based on her beliefs. And then, I mean, obviously, if that, as you said, ended the encounter rather abruptly, that might be a bit beyond that. But
well, my thing is, God, I wish I would have stayed longer to speak to this lady because I would like to pick her brain. I'd be like, what if I was a Satanist and I helped you out and you didn't know I was a Satanist? And then I told you after you said, God will take care of you and read your Bible and God will let you into the pearly gates. I would be curious to know, like, I helped you do something that you've been trying to do, that you've been, trying to accomplish for the past week. And you didn't know what my religion was. You didn't know what my background was. But the second you bring religion into it, everything goes south. And it's almost like, even with wars, most wars are fought over religion. It's like, why can't we be nice to each other? Why can't we help each other? But the second I bring in something that you don't believe, all hell breaks. I find that fascinating. Wow.
I mean, yeah, and again, some of that I think has to do with the fact that a lot of Christians feel like they're better than non-Christians, which is that whole superiority complex thing, which is completely unearned. And then again, some of it when they're like very pushy about trying to like get you to convert, or they're like saying like, "Oh, I'll pray for you," or I think it's sad that you're not.
She actually said that. She actually said that to me as well. She said, I'll make sure to pray for you.
Right, and it's very possible that she genuinely thinks that's a good thing to do, right? And that is, I think, what makes it very hard to convince those people to not interact with you that way, because as you said, right, you want to do right by people, and Christians tend, at least some Christians, tend to believe that is the right thing to do. And then, because again, they think that is your way to heaven. And obviously, if you believe that there's an eternal life after this limited life, then, and the option is basically permanent torture or, perfect heaven, then obviously they would want to do anything in their power. Well, not usually anything, but they
exactly
at least want to steer you in the right direction because they feel a moral imperative to do so. And I also find it annoying, but I do think that it's something that you kind of also have to be able to understand their perspective. And as annoying as it is, they are at least trying to do a good thing.
Trying, yes. And from being a Bible Belt, a person who grew up in the Bible Belt, the Bible says, love thy neighbor. So even though your neighbor, you may hate your neighbor, the book that you follow, the God that you follow, still tells you, in order to get into this place when you die, be nice to me. be nice. Which she was. She wasn't an asshole, but it's
I mean, obviously,
it's
right?
very interesting.
Southern hospitality, right? You're always at least superficially nice to people.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean that's definitely a thing. I don't think we necessarily need to talk more about that, but yeah, no, there is definitely something to be said about that sort of thing, and
yes,
I think as long as Christianity is the biggest religion in the world, and especially in certain parts of the world, that is probably not going to change that quickly.
Hey, this is the goodness of when me and you sit down and talk. We can get on one topic, and that topic will take us down this road, that road, that road. But somehow, JJ, we find a way to bring it.
And we bring it to the song of the week. How about that?
Yeah,
we are. What is your song of the week?
All right. My song of the week, and shout out to all the trash talkers. Guys, check out Rappers Rec if you haven't done so already. I'm sure JJ will leave it in the comments. But this song came from one of our Patreon members that said, check this song out by a band called Avenged Sevenfold. And the name of the song is called A Little Piece of Heaven. I heard it for the first time and definitely top 10, one of the best songs I've heard while doing Rappers Rec.
I really always knew that my little crime would be cold. That's why I got a heater for your thighs. And I know it's not your time, but bye-bye. And a word to the wise when the fire dies. You think it's over, but it's just begun.
Love that, dude.
I'm gonna have to say this is one of those where I can't immediately form a strong opinion on the song. There's definitely parts that I quite liked, some parts that I'm not as into, but there's nothing that that would be particularly against, right? So sometimes you have elements in songs that are like, ooh, no, this is just bad. But this doesn't have any of that, and this definitely has some good moments. I'm not sure if it overall has convinced me yet, but obviously I'm gonna give it another listen. I also haven't really listened to it in its entirety yet. So.
I'll say, don't listen to the song. Watch the video. It gives you more. It's about necrophilia, and it sounds so pleasant. But just watch the video and thank me later.
Okay. Well, I guess that brings us to my song of the week, and my song of the week is "Rock and Roll Queen" by The Subways.
You are the sun, you are the only one. My heart is blue, my heart is blue for you.
Hey? Okay. Oh, I like that.
I will have to say, it is fairly repetitive, so there isn't really that much more to the song than what you've heard. I mean, a little bit more, but not that much more, so that is sort of the one downside, but I think it is still, it's a very, just acoustically very nice song, I think, and, yeah.
Is this a newer band?
Not new, but also not old. I mean,
what are we talking
like the
early 2000s, mid 2000s? It had a pop punk feel.
I think it's around that time. Let's see, they were formed in 2002, and apparently they're still. Theirs says 2000. Well, 2000 to present it says here, and let's see the song, which "Young for Eternity" that was 2004 apparently.
Yeah.
Great. Here it says 2005, but anyways, it's the early to mid 2000s. Okay, that's the idea.
Yeah, dude, that's I love doing songs a week with you, man, because you come with some things that I've never heard, and I've never even heard of the Subways, but I like the vibe. I like the.
Admittedly, that's also the only song of theirs that I know, but and I think it's one that Alex showed to me at some point, so it's one of those, We're basically playing a game of telephone as well right now. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, shout out to Alex, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, maybe I should see what other songs they have. Maybe this was the only good song. I genuinely couldn't tell you. I think I said this before, right? I don't tend to get into bands that much, or artists in general, where it's like I'll get into songs, and that's about it, right? So every now and again I'll be like, hey, I know a couple of good songs by that band. Let me look what else they've done. But oftentimes it's just like, oh, I like this song. and then it doesn't even occur to me to look up what else the band has done.
As you have a big Alice Cooper, as you have a big Gene Simmons behind you. As you have a big...
I mean, yeah. I do...
Go ahead, sorry.
I do have a couple of Kiss songs that I do quite like, but I mean, this is also partially circumstantial. My favorite Kiss song, probably...
I Was Made for Loving You.
Honestly, I think that's one of their maybe weaker songs even. I mean, it's obviously the most well-known, but I would probably go either with I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll, or what is the other one? Fuck!
I'll say Detroit City Rock.
No, let me pull up what Kiss songs do I have.
Dude, I'm sorry. I Was Made for Loving You.
Crazy Crazy Nights is the other one.
I have heard of that one. I haven't heard it, but I have seen it in our comments to check that one out.
Yeah, so those two are probably my favorites. Honestly, I'm not as big of a Kiss fan as this might suggest. The story behind that is literally just that is it's technically it's supposed to go on a bed on a, what do they call the bed blankets? Fucking hell.
A blanket?
Is it the only term you have?
Yeah, blanket. You could call it a bedspread. You could call it a duvet. You could call it... I mean, it's just a blanket, dude. Don't get too technical, JJ.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
A blanket.
I guess duvet or bed cover are the two that Translate tells me as well. Honestly, this is one of those things, right? Like, not something I talk about a lot, so sometimes I have these really random gaps in my English knowledge, right? Where it's like, I speak English arguably fluently, right? But then it's like something like very mundane and like everyday, but because I still live my daily life in German, like, and I don't really talk about my bed that much with strangers, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, it just doesn't count. Anyway, so yeah, it's a cover like for that, and so, my mother bought that at some point because it was like, just in like a local like supermarket discount store kind of, and she was like, "Oh, you like Kiss?" It's like, "Yeah, sure." And then when when I wanted to put something back there, I mostly don't have the window there. Although by now I usually put the blinds on anyways when I record, so it shouldn't really matter. But I think, you know, just to have something covering the window there, and this was like the most aesthetically pleasing thing of roughly the correct size that I had, so that's just why I.
Hey, and it's a good backdrop as well, dude.
Yeah, I think so too. That's, and again, right? I could have just had like a one, like, you know, basically like sort of this color, like the same, like sort of like a just beige with thing, like something off whites. But it's like that's kind of boring.
You should get you a green screen. You should get you a green screen, man.
Is something that we talked about way back in the day, but the main problem is, right, as you could maybe tell, this is my bed, right behind me there. So I could put a green screen where Gene Simmons is, but I can't really put one like behind my bed because it goes up to the wall. So there's really no space to consistently.
You just need one literally right behind you. Just a big. Go to the store, get you a big green construction paper, and just put it like on like 2 stands. That'd be great, dude. That'd be dope.
I mean, first of all, the couch would probably still be in frame, but then the other thing is...
okay.
And again, right, you could only have it go up to there, because it's literally like, I'm sitting on a couch that is sitting right against the bed physically, and the bed is against the wall, right? So there's no space really in between. And also you're supposed to have some distance from a green screen, otherwise you get a lot of artifacting, especially with my long hair. It's going to be one of those things where you have a lot of like the green outline around me, and the further away the green screen is, the more consistent the color appears on camera, and the easier it is to chroma key it out. But that is very specific technical stuff.
Well, I mean, we can talk more off this on camera, but dude, you know, we use the green screen when we do our podcast, and we're still trying to figure it out. Like, I mean, where do we put the lights, or where do we stand? But slowly but surely, we'll figure it out, man.
Yeah, that's something that's a discussion that we should have on the podcast. But
yes.
That is, I guess, a good reason to wrap it up, since some of the week segment has gone over time anyways. So check out the Trash Talkers. Link is the first one in the description below, as always. And if you want to see more of this content, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give a like if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you have any feedback. And join the Discord server if you want to talk to either of us. We're in there basically all the time. And Hollywood.
That's it.
That's it.